Food and culture are inseparable and have been for millennia. Food has shaped trade routes. It started wars. It helped bring peace. Ingredients have been mashed together in ways the maddest of mad scientists would raise an eyebrow at. Here's some of the strangest food that didn't quite conquer the world in the way rice or potatoes did, but had an impact on the entire world in their own right. 100-year-old egg, anyone? How about a whole goat stuffed with rocks? Psychosis-inducing honey that helped defeat the Romans? Are you hungry yet? Sentry Eggs. China has a long, rich culinary history. One of its strangest dishes has a name that does that history justice. The Sentry Egg isn't for the gastronomically unadventurous.
Around 500 years ago, it said a farmer stumbled across some duck eggs sitting in a muddy pool that happened to be mixed with slaked lime or calcium hydroxide. When he cracked one of the eggs open, he found that it was basically hard-boiled, except that the egg white took on a translucent, jelly-looking amber color. For whatever reason, he decided to take a bite. He was hooked immediately. It was savory with a distinct umami flavor that was almost meaty. And he needed more.
The farmer went on a mission to replicate the process. First, he coated some duck eggs or quail eggs with a mixture of that slaked lime and water. He probably didn't know it at the time, but the alkaline coating was essential for raising the pH of the eggs and kicking off the preservation process. Once coated, he wrapped the eggs in a layer of rice straw, which allowed air to circulate around the eggs while preventing contaminants from entering. He then stuck them in a clay pot and filled it with a mixture of clay and water, sealing them in. He let them sit for a couple of months, and voila! The Sentry Egg was born. The technique has been replicated and honed ever since. Sentry eggs are a delicacy in China, and while it doesn't take 100 years to make them, they certainly look like they could be that old. Mad honey.
When the Greeks and then the Romans tried to invade the people along the Black Sea coast of modern-day Turkey, they were met with a secret weapon that they didn't see coming: honey.
In 67 BC, General Pompey led a Roman army into the kingdom of Pontus, led at the time by Mithridates IV. It's said that just before Pompey and his army approached the key city, Mithridates' men lined their path with juicy bits of honeycomb. Hungry legionnaires gobbled the stuff up, and soon they were hallucinating. They were sick. They were falling down. They were dying. Mithridates' men came through and routed the tripping Romans. Almost 400 years earlier, a Greek army led by Xenophon of Athens was traveling back along the Black Sea coast after winning a battle against a Persian army. When they stopped near the city of Trabzon, they found some beehives filled with honey and sat down to have a feast. Again, hallucinations, vomiting, disorientation. Xenophon wrote later that the Persian army caught up with the tripping Greeks and took out 1,000 of them while they were debilitatingly high. The honey the Romans and Greeks ate is called mad honey for obvious reasons. There are different types of mad honey around the world, but this one is only found in the Black Sea region of eastern Turkey. It's made when bees pollinate certain rhododendron flowers that contain a neurotoxin in their nectar.
Eat a bit and you'll feel a slight buzz and maybe some hallucinations. Eat too much and you could die. You can still buy the stuff if you're ever in Northeast Turkey, but it'll cost you. It's the priciest honey in the world at $166 a pound. Plus tax. There is always tax.
First ever hot chocolate.
When Christopher Columbus returned to Europe after his fourth trip to the Americas in 1502, he brought a bunch of stuff back with him. Among the bags of gold and silver were some strange beans that nobody thought much of. Just a few decades later, they'd become one of the biggest culinary game changers in European history. They even changed Christian doctrine.
The Aztecs considered cacao beans divine. They were the physical manifestation of Quetzalcoatl. They even used them as money. When the conquistadors came through, they were not too excited about the cacao drink they were given, which was usually mixed with chili. Imagine that, chocolate and chili. But in 1521, Hernán Cortés brought the drink to Spain, added some sugar, and gave it to Charles V. It was a hit. Chocolate grinders, or molinderos, started grinding up the beans into a paste and making a thick cocoa drink. Monks in monasteries started making and consuming the stuff.
It became such a hit that it sparked a major theological debate in Christianity about whether drinking the chocolate drink violated fasting rules. Catholic Cardinal Francesco Maria Brancaccio, maybe a chocolate lover himself, finally gave a definitive answer in the 1600s, decreeing once and for all that liquid does not break the fast.
Thick, hot cocoa became all the rage among European aristocracy. Women in church drank it to keep themselves awake during long sermons. It became so common that the Catholic bishops started banning it from inside holy walls of their churches. Garam the Great.
Putrefied fish guts don't seem like they'd make a good sauce. They don't seem like they'd make a good anything. Ugh. No, I'd rather not, thank you. But a fish concoction that's as extinct now as the dinosaurs actually helped shape the Roman Empire.
Garam was kind of similar to the fish sauce that's still hugely popular in many Asian cuisines. It was made by fermenting the guts of small fish like anchovies or mackerel with salt in huge vats. The fish guts were layered with salt and left to ferment for a few months. As gross as it sounds, the fermentation process allowed enzymes and bacteria to break down the fish into a savory liquid. Garam was the most popular condiment around in Roman times. It could be eaten straight as a dipping sauce or drizzled over dishes. It was also a common ingredient in Roman recipes, adding depth and umami flavor to stews and sauces.
Garam was so popular in ancient Rome and demand was so high that it helped drive the creation of major trade networks throughout the empire. Coastal cities like Pompeii and Ostia were built around fisheries and fish processing factories dedicated to the production of the fermented fish guts. In a way, you could say the Romans built their coastal empire by following the migration patterns of anchovies and mackerel.
It also helped that they had one of the fiercest and well-trained militaries in history. And I'll tell you right now, Augustus loved the stuff. Bird's nest soup.
High on a cliff in the mountains somewhere in China, there's a man poking around at a bird's nest. He's risking his life to get one of the most valuable and sought-after foods around. But he's not looking for an egg to make into a sentry egg. He wants the nest itself.
Bird's nest soup is made from the nest of swiftlets. These small, knife-like birds secrete a sticky, gel-like substance from their salivary glands to build their nests, what basically amounts to their spit, then hardens when it's exposed to the air and forms the nest structure. Once the nests are harvested, and hopefully the man on the cliff doesn't plummet to the afterlife, the bird's nests are cleaned and soaked in water to soften them up and remove bits of feathers. The softened nests are then simmered in a gentle broth, often chicken or clear soup, until they become tender and translucent.
Bird's nest soup has a long history in traditional Chinese medicine and is considered a valuable tonic. It's thought to have quite a few health benefits, including helping with digestion and boosting the immune system. But wow, it's expensive.
Only the rich can afford the strange soup. One famous lover of the swiftlet spit was Empress Dowager Cixi, who effectively ruled China from the late Qing dynasty into the early 20th century. Apparently, she ate the delicacy on a regular, and even stockpiled bird's nests to make sure she had a steady supply. Deadly but delicious.
There are certain plants and animals that can end our lives pretty quickly if we eat them. You can imagine a hunter-gatherer talking to his friend, warning him not to eat that mushroom because it killed his Uncle Frank last week. Yet some toxic foods have been eaten anyway. One of them is the pufferfish, or fugu in Japan.
The Japanese have been eating the highly toxic fugu for millennia. Their bones have been found in settlements from the Jomon period that date back 2,300 years. There was definitely a point early on when people didn't know how to prepare it properly, which meant for lots of people it might have been their last meal. But the fact that people kept preparing it and figured out how to without dying meant that there was probably a pretty serious food shortage at some point, and if you're left with little to eat except a toxic fish, then you either adapt or perish. Fugu contains a lethal neurotoxin that doesn't have any known antidote. The neurotoxin accumulates in the liver, ovaries, and skin. But if you're skilled enough to carefully remove all that, you're left with a delicious sushi delicacy that's high in protein. It's thought fugu was originally used for medicinal purposes, but during the Heian period, which lasted from 794 to 1185, it became a staple at the dinner tables of the elite class in Kyoto. However, in the early 1600s, the Tokugawa shogunate made it illegal to prepare the pufferfish. It was basically one of the earliest versions of a Food and Drug Administration type decree, saying, "This is not fit for consumption."
When the Meiji Restoration rolled around towards the end of the 1800s, Japan started regulating fugu more. You now have to go through some pretty rigorous training to get a license to prepare fugu in a restaurant. All that effort certainly pays off for the restaurant goers, though. The presentation of some fugu dishes is mesmerizing, and the taste is really, wait a minute, I got one more, really good.
Mongolian Bawdug.
The Mongols had more than a few victories along their way to conquering nearly the entire Eurasian continent. And to celebrate, Genghis Khan was known to throw lavish banquets and chow down on one of Mongolia's long, meaty culinary traditions.
Mongolian armies traveled light. Cooking pots were heavy and too burdensome for an army that prioritized speed and efficiency over comfort. So they often had to prepare their food in more creative ways. Bawdug was one of those ways. The Mongols usually cooked whole goat, marmot, or whatever other animals they had around while they were traveling to different regions throughout the steppe, China, and Eastern Europe. First, they would split the animal open and remove the organs, which they'd prepare separately. Then, the Mongolian butcher would carefully remove the meat, cut it up, maybe add veggies if they had any available. The skin and fur of the animal was carefully left intact, and then the meat is stuffed back inside the carcass along with hot stones. The whole thing is then spit roasted over the fire, cooking the animal from both the outside and the inside. No pots necessary, the goat or marmot became the crockery. Feeding what would become the largest contiguous land empire in history was no small task, and the efficiency of Bawdug was a key part of helping the Mongol armies gallop from the Mongolian steppe into China, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe.
Thanks for watching. What other bizarre food traditions do you want to learn about? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more nutty history.